finally started raining here, so I took my son, 14 Mel, out mushroom hunting over the weekend. It was later than we normally go, and the sun goes down much earlier, but we were taking a quick trail to the river and back in hopes to finding turkey trails or chanterelles. We took a wrong turn and ended up going through a big field, which the trail would take us back around to the main trail to the river. As we walked toward the main trail, the last group of people had left, and it was just me and my son. We walked along, and out of a thickest side trail came this weird man. He had a dog with him that was alert at his side. He was staring at us as we walked closer towards him. Then he started waving at us, this really weird slow wave, and I was immediately uncomfortable and goosebumpy. Didn't want to be impolite, so I half-heartedly waved back while staring back and telling my son to slow up a little bit. I didn't want to actually meet up at the junction. After a full minute of us dawdling, the guy slowly turned and began walking down the trail toward the main trail. I was wary walking, didn't want to go too fast, and we stopped to look at some plants, so the guy and the dog got further down this trail, which curved to the right and continued on 2 blocks to the junction. I was thinking if this was a creepy let's not meet, this dude would be waiting around the corner. And sure enough, he was standing at the junction, off to the left and toward the parking lot, and to the right was the .6 trail to the river. Dude was just standing there with his dog, staring at us and just not moving at all. Both my son and I were like, holy shit, what the fuck? Let's keep wide to the right. He looks old, we could run faster than him. He kept staring at us as we approached. I asked him if he was okay and kept staring back. He had greasy hair, tiny round glasses, a blue windbreaker, plaid long shorts, and he was about 50 years old. His dog was a small beagle mix. He didn't answer me at all, he just kept staring. We turned to the right and walked about a block. I had my phone cam facing me, so I could watch him over my shoulder, and the only movement was him slowly shifting his direction to continue staring at us. I didn't say anything else to him. It was moderately unsettling, his stare, made more so by his lack of responses, emotionless face, his weird tiny glasses, and slow waving at us like a zombie. He did leave because on our way back he was no longer standing on the main trail. So hey to the freaky forest zombie dude, for sure, stay in the thickets and let's not meet. A few months ago, I was staying in my partner's apartment for a few weeks by myself. I don't quite remember why I was out that late, but it was around 1 a.m. and I just got off the transit. Only one other guy got off with me, and he was rather tall and walked briskly. I was ahead of him at first, but he quickly passed me because even though I have a quick stride, I'm pretty short for a guy. I don't normally live in that city, so I'm not sure why, but the streets were incredibly empty. I remember thinking that because there wasn't even a single car on the road. We were literally a 5-minute walk away from a major university, so it was very odd to me to not see a single person or a car. The only lights on were street lights. I spent nights at my partner's place before, and I never remembered it ever being this dead. Anyways, I had walked down the street and was coming up to an intersection where I had to turn left. I noticed this guy standing around in front of the bank that was on that corner. The guy ahead of me walked by him with no problem and went straight. I was a bit weary, but didn't think much of him until I was about maybe a meter away and had sidestepped me to be in front of me and held his arms wide open, grinning at me. I glanced in the direction of the guy who left the train with me, but he was across the street already. My heart was already pounding at this point, and I think I may have started to dissociate from the stress because I can't remember what he looked like, even though I remember looking directly at him. If this sounds like an overreaction, I have a history of multiple cases of CSA by different people and have PTSD among other mental illnesses that I still struggle with. At the time, I was falling back into my disordered eating again and was also underweight in addition to being short, so definitely not the person you'd expect to win in a fight, and I knew it. I remember being frozen for a moment, and then on instinct I very politely said, "No thank you." Took a step to the right towards the street and tried to keep walking forward. He moved in front of me again, still with his arms wide open, expecting me to hug him, still grinning. For some reason, I repeated my polite refusal and sidestepped him again instead of running the opposite direction. Luckily, he let me pass, but I could hear him following me from a short distance. I was wondering what I could do in that moment. I couldn't fight him. There was no one around. If I tried to call someone, he was close enough to grab me, and I wasn't able to run very fast. Suddenly I hear his steps speed up into a sprint, and before I could react, he slowed down again. I walked a bit faster. He repeated the same thing over and over, I wondered if I should go a different path so he doesn't know where I live. It wasn't the best idea since I didn't know the city well and he probably knew it better than I did. I decided I knew I could find help in the lobby, at least compared to if I went somewhere else. He sprinted at me again and I turned around and loudly asked him, "Do you need help?" I remember not feeling my body and feeling lightheaded from the anxiety. Despite how panicked I felt, my voice came out clearly and I sounded disdainful. I don't think I meant to sound like he was annoying and inconveniencing me, but that's just how it came out. Then he spoke for the first time and responded,
"No, do you need help?"
I didn't say anything to that and just turned back around and kept speed walking towards my partner's apartment building. He was still following, but now he was talking. I can't remember much of what he said, and I was just focused on getting back without being assaulted. Eventually, I heard him stop walking.
"I know I'm scary."
I don't know why he said that. I took the opportunity to put more distance between us and kept speed walking. He didn't keep following though. He just kept saying,
"I know I'm scary."
He got louder and louder the further I got. I got to the door of the apartment building and looked back again. He was no longer in sight. I unlocked the door to the building and then ran up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. When I got into the apartment, I went straight to the window because the unit had a large window facing the street. I wanted to see if I could see him, but nothing. The streets were empty. I texted my partner about my experience, but he was already asleep and wouldn't see it. Luckily, I haven't seen that man again and I hope I never will. This happened when I was about 8 to 10 years old. I remember it perfectly. But I've confirmed the details with my mother and the memory of it still sends chills down both of our spines to this day. It was broad daylight on a Saturday and I was in the town center with my mother. The streets were busy and people just bustled past. We paused at a shop front that sold ornaments, the ugly old-fashioned kind that old grannies like. We'd often stop to look at them and laugh at how expensive they were, wondering how that place even stayed open. I was a real chatterbox as a kid and was talking animatedly to my mother about something or other, facing her as I did so. Like it was yesterday, I remember her smiling face and how it suddenly dropped. Her jaw hung open and her eyes were as big as dinner plates. She just stared at me silently for a few seconds and then grabbed my arm hard and pulled me away. Her fingers were digging into my arm as she dragged me into the crowd, walking as fast as she could without running. Being that kid, I squealed and loudly kept saying, "What are you doing? Ouch, Mom, you're hurting me. That hurt. Where are we going?" while trying to stop. She gritted her teeth and silently dragged me about 3 streets before stopping somewhere less busy for a second. It was only then that she let go of my arm, rubbing it and looking extremely upset. Looking me dead in the eye, she explained that as I was talking outside the shop, she had noticed an old man stood behind me. He was dirty and disheveled, like the horror movie stereotype of a creepy old man. I had long pretty hair as a little girl and people stopped us all the time to remark on it, especially when I wore it loose. This old man had very gently lifted a handful of my hair in his hand and was smelling it, tickling his nose as he did so, and I was clearly so absorbed in telling my story, I hadn't even realized I was being touched. My mother made eye contact with the man as he opened his eyes while inhaling the smell of my hair. He gave her an absolutely nauseating toothy grin, quickly dropping my hair and waving at her, waggling his fingers all cutesy-like.
"Whoopsie, you caught me,"
was the vibe, clearly knowing exactly what he did. He then disappeared into the throng of people moving past. My poor mother immediately felt sick and just went into autopilot, dragging me away as fast as she could in the opposite direction. I didn't even know how to react when she told me what happened, except to be horrified and so glad that we had gotten away safely. I still walk past that shop and the memory of my mother's haunted expression makes me feel ill. Creepy old man, let's not meet, ever.